Hey guys, ZEVENX here. We're going to start off this tutorial going into the next part of this tutorial series where we're covering more of the melody section that would be put more in the drop. And so I'm going to show you how I developed it in the build and then go into the different synth layers that I used for the drop and the processing on all that. So the first thing I'm going to show you is the melody itself, which is this. So that's the main melody right here, which is actually, if you look at this right here, these notes, and I have a layer of that an octave down, exactly the same, just to give it a little bit of character at half the velocity, which is a technique you guys can use, and I use it sometimes to kind of give my melody sometimes a brighter sound or a deeper sound depending on which way I'm going. But that's playing during the build, where I have this going on. Okay, and I'm just going to go through that processing real quick on this piano melody just because I might get some questions about it since it's very reverby and wide and whatever. So this is the grand piano stock from Ableton, so I just use that. I have an EQ here, just taking out some of the lows, maybe boosting some of the mids, which you can use any EQ for that. I have an auto filter that's just going so that I can sweep at certain points, I'm sure. And then the OTT, I'm using the multiband dynamics effect right here, and then OTT right there, and just boosting some of those mid highs and I guess even pushing what lows there are. Next up, we have the reverb here, which you can copy the settings as usual, and I just adjust the dry wet signal of the reverb so that I can start making it wider, which is what I'm doing in this section. As I am starting, it's not as wide and wet as to when I'm getting closer to the drop, just kind of phasing it out, just washing it out so that I can drop into some heavier process, more unnatural synth sounds. And then we have this EQ, again, very simple, just kind of cutting those low frequencies, which I don't really need after the reverb, that can muddy up that mix, and so then just pushing up some of those mid highs and highs. And then just the utility where I'm playing with the width again. I do this a lot, and I don't know how much I've covered it in the tutorials, but in a lot of my instrumentation, I will use a width parameter to adjust how far I'm going out, again, to wash out the signal over time. And so that's something I am applying here, starting at 145 here, and then at the end of it, 119. So it's progressing over time and getting a little bit more narrow. It helps widen it out or whatever you may need. And vice versa, you can make it very centered in mono and then open it up in a stereo signal. And that's pretty much it for that one. Now, moving on to the synths, we have this right here. Well, I'll just play the drop. And then I'm going to go into the second drop and show the variation I did there. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the synth, and then I'll talk about the change in melody. So first up, we have this main saw lead, as I labeled it. And this is just out of Silent. Now, I do a lot of processing as a group on this. When I group all my synths together, I have this processing going on. Again, OTT to kind of just push that. And again, some of the highs, the mids, and even the lows. Cutting out some here. And then the LFO tool to give it that sidechain. And again, a compressor where I'm applying a different kind of sidechain in a different section of the song. So I just use, I don't know, I guess both in different manners that I may need. This one has a high ratio, so I don't know, it looks like it's a pretty deep sidechain. But aside from that, let me just unfreeze this so you can see the Silent preset. It's from Vandalism, and I'm not sure exactly which one, but it's Lead Curiosity. I think it might be from either the sound bank in either 13, 14, 15, or 16. Or it might be one of the new ones. Let me see if it says here. No, but it might be 19. If not 19, then like I said, either 13 through 16. Regardless, this is the preset right here. I'll just flash it real quick, and if you guys want to pause the video, you can copy that. There's part A, part B, and so yeah, that's that synth. Notes playing in the 4th octave. Here we have this hard pluck attack, and this one I use so that it gives it that clicky kind of punchy attack for the melody, so that it doesn't get too scattered. It's like it gives it that hard hit of note, which is, it's not a very crazy pluck, it's just something to give it that character at the beginning. Very subtle, but I think it does a lot. So let me unfreeze that, show you the synth, silent again. Can pause the video. This is part B. This is part A. Part B. And this EQ here, or right here, what I have is increase the gain to 5 dB. The width, I put it down to 0 so that it would be in mono, because it's more of like a pluck attack and I want it to be a little bit more intense and harder. I want it to be in the center of the stereo field so that it's pushing. It's one of those like driving synths that's what's giving it that more aggressive direction. And then I just have a simple EQ here, kind of boosting some of those mids and highs, and let's just... So this is it without. Just pushing it a little bit more. I mean, normally this isn't a very orthodox EQ parameter, but this is just what I did to kind of push it that way. And I'm sure you could have done it a million other ways. Moving on. Low saw support, so it's probably another saw, and what I'm doing is getting just more of that lower end. I'm trying to cover all the frequencies here and all the different characteristics of the melody, which is why I had the harder pluck attack, I had that high saw, and now I have this low saw to kind of give it those lower notes. So I'm in the 3rd octave in this one. And I'm going to unfreeze this. I'm going to flash the synth. Vandalism, lead alive. This is part A, part B. Copy if you so desire. And then this one is something, this is where we're going to start getting into some of the more characteristic type synths. So this is what I called toy high-bit synth, because this is what it sounds like. So let me talk a little bit about this one. First things first, if you guys want to get with this synth, this is part A. You can press pause or whatever you like. That's the distort, delay, reverb. And then part B, these are the parameters. So you guys can pause it and copy this. Once you have this, or you have something similar to it, you get that sound, and it's just one of those that gives it that weird character. And this is where we start getting into kind of that Holo, Marshmello-y type sound, because it's got that chirpy feel, and that's really, like I said, the character of the synth. And so I use this to be almost the lead synth, as in what I want to stand out, and a lot of those other synths that I'm using are more of a support to cover that frequency range that I was referring to earlier. So we have that going on, and then I have an Effectrix, which it's really just a pitch bend, vinyl stop type effect, so you can do that either with pitch bending down with your MIDI information, or using Effectrix. And I have a tutorial on how to do that, that vinyl stop stretch thingy. So if you guys want to, I'll put an annotation or a link in the comment section or something to link to that video on how to do the vinyl stops or the stretch stops. So we have that going on. Moving on to the last one, which is the weirdest one in my opinion, we have this one. Now, because I can't exactly describe what kind of sound this even is, I'm just going to flash this. It's Vandalism Lead Alien. So if you have the Vandalism sound banks, I suggest you just go through them and try and find it so that you don't have to go there. But if you don't, these are the parameters you can copy. And if you don't have Silent or whatever, I mean, the point is you want to sound like this. Something just very wild and weird and characteristic that is going to support. It's not meant to be the main one, but it's definitely a support for that high bit synth type sound that I had over here. So we have all this going on, and one thing that I want to talk about when it comes to layering all these synths together, because you have a lot going on here. And you can kind of hear it. So one thing that I do is you have to, first of all, I mean, work on your mix down of all these layers together. So as you can see, you know, I brought this down, you know, -18 on the mixer and for the gain. And same with this, you know, I brought it down a little bit. Same with this one, I brought it down, and same with my chorus. You know, I mix it down all together. So one thing I suggest all the time is, like, when you're mixing a group section of synths, for example, in this situation, start with like your main one that you're starting off with, something strong, and then just keep it at like a level volume, which is why, since this was the first one, the main solid, it's at 0. Everything after that just kind of became, and if I mean, that one's easy to adjust at the end, but so let's say I start out with that one. Everything else after that, I want to like basically bring it down in volume all the way, and then I always just kind of bring it down, or I just kind of like swing it back and forth until I feel like it's the right spot. I never just like do slow increments necessarily. I kind of drop it up and down until it starts feeling right, and then I wiggle down to a more narrow area and focus in on a section. And once you start doing that, you're going to get a lot more of a cleaner mix. Keeping that in mind, there's still panning techniques that you can apply, which is something that I used for this characteristic type synth. So with the toy high bit synth, this one, panning it slightly to the left, and as you can see with the chirpy weird synth, it's panned a little bit to the right. And those are just slight little maneuvers that you can apply so that it's not all cluttered in the same section, and you can get, because of how unique those sounds especially were, I wanted to make sure they had their own space a little bit, so that's why I pushed them a little bit in different directions, and they sit better in the mix. Overall, I carried out this pluck synth. Which is the ARP melody that I had in this section, just with the heavier section. And so all of that sitting together now. So the next question you might have real quickly that I want to cover is just about the change in melody. Now the reason I did this is because, first of all, it's the second drop. I want to create some variation and not make it seem like it's just copy pasted from the first one to the second one. It's very similar, but what I do with that second half of the drop is kind of, in my terms, resolve the melody by driving it up even more, creating more energy, and going up in my note, in my scales. I'm going higher in the note ranges that I have available to me, and in doing so, like I said, I'm kind of resolving some of those sounds. You can kind of, when you look at it, this is something just you want to notice with melody writing or whatever. It's all about shape, and you can definitely tell there's patterns here. So even though this part is different than this part, you can see that it still follows a similar pattern. It has, you know, starting right here in the middle, works its way down, drives up, down, up, down, up, down, and it kind of creates these mountain things. And you can see the shapes that are created here. when you start seeing a pattern in shapes, it's very likely that you're going to have a much catchier melody or something that sounds sweeter to the ear if you do your melody writing in this manner. So that's just a small tip, kind of, like I said, resolving melodies. Just listen to the main melody, listen to it in your head, and kind of think, how much more can I add to this by driving it with a little bit of a higher energy, almost like a harmony that you would add, but just adding it later on is just an additive to the main melody to continue on. So just think about things like that, and I think that if you're able to even do that, that's going to make a big difference in your productions. If you feel like the melody you're working with may not have that, you might want to consider where your melody is at, how catchy it is. It's something definitely worth experimenting. And I'm not saying that if you can't feel like you can keep on resolving your melody that it's not good, but I don't know, it just might be something to think about. So that's pretty much it for this tutorial. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have just another playthrough quickly covering all the different layers. The effects, they're important, so I want to cover them, but it's going to go so quickly that I think I'm just going to leave it for that last video where I'm going to play through the song and talk about maybe a few little different small details. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for checking out this video. Be sure to subscribe to my channel for the latest videos every Monday and Wednesday, and click on this box here for the latest video. Keep on producing, and I'll see you guys in the next one.